Welcome to Breaking Silos, a podcast that shines a light on the incredible partnerships happening across campuses every day. I'm your host, Shane Baglini from Muhlenberg College. Join me every 2 weeks for discussions with some of the best minds in higher ed marketing, enrollment management, student affairs, campus leadership, and more. Breaking Silos is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome to the final episode of Breaking Silos. I'm joined today by a friend and colleague, Vince Slomsky. Vince is the Assistant Vice President of Marketing and Communications at the University of South Florida. Hey, Vince.
Hey, Shane. So nice to join you today. Honored this is the final one. Let's have some fun with this one together.
Absolutely. And Vince is somebody I'm very jealous of right now because I'm looking outside my window and it is freezing outside. And I know that well, Vince, from your time in Pennsylvania and some time in Ohio. So enjoy the weather down there for us.
Yeah, born and raised in Ohio, spent some time in Pennsylvania. I think it's been in the 80s all week down here in Florida. Although the crazy part, as I'm looking out the window, there's a bunch of smoke in the air because I guess they're doing a controlled burn in a nearby forest. And nobody around here knew that was happening, but I think the winds shifted and there's just a bunch of smoke in the air. It's really weird outside right now.
Yeah, I think I'd rather still have that than 15 degrees up here in Pennsylvania.
Yes, absolutely.
But Vince, so you mentioned being from around the Northeast and Midwest, and so you're relatively new in your role, and that's what we're talking about today. I think anybody knows that's gone into a new role, especially as a leader, it's challenging. So tell us about, in general, some of kind of the unique challenges as a higher ed marketer entering a new leadership role and why relationship management is so important right from the start.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had the fortune to do this a couple of times now over the past few years. It was at Kent State University, then Penn State, and now the University of South Florida. All amazing universities. But you hit the nail on the head, Shane. As you enter any new workplace, right? There's challenges, but I like to consider them challenges that are fun to take on. So you enter this place and you're the new person and you don't know anybody and you don't know what has happened in the past. But you sure learn about it quick, typically, when you enter a new role and you hear about this person and how they're not a great collaborator, or you hear about this vendor that we've used in the past and they were just terrible to work with. But I like that challenge because when I come into a new role and I hear, hey, this person isn't a great collaborator, okay, challenge accepted. I'm the new guy. I shouldn't let what has happened in the past affect my chances at forming a good relationship with this person. So that's my mindset is entering these new roles, is how important relationship management is, because I can't do my job unless I have people to work with effectively. So step one for me is typically you enter these new roles and you just pause because you've got to be a sponge at that point. You've got to take everything in. I don't know what's happened in the past. I don't know what campaigns they're working on. I don't know this, that, and the other, but it's my job to figure that out. And so I typically try to take those first 3, 6, sometimes 9 months and just learn about the landscape that I'm walking into, and doing a little mini listening tour, if you will. Doing Teams meetings, Zoom meetings, in-person meetings are the best in my mind, if possible, because you can just sit down with folks and say, hey, what's going on in your world? Not only are you getting the chance to put a face to the name and understand that person and perhaps form a friendship or just a relationship in general with the person, but you're learning about what's going on in their world. Because us as marketers, right, Shane, our job is to promote, our job is to sell, in a way, what's going on at our university. How the heck are we supposed to know what's going on at our university until we get out, boots on the ground, and figure that out by meeting with all the people that we need to form these relationships with? So just to wrap that thought up, that's the approach that I've taken this third time now as I've entered a new role, especially at an AVP level, is you can't come in thinking that you know it all and that your way or the highway. You have got to pause and you've got to be a sponge for those first several months, build those relationships up, because in the long run, that's what it is, right? This is the long game. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Build those relationships up, figure out what's going on at your new place of employment, and then you can go back and be strategic about, okay, what Sally said when I met with her, or whoever, would go really well with this marketing campaign we're working on, or for this story generation in general is just you've got to get out and figure that out and meet people before you can tell an accurate story. So yeah, long-winded answer of saying relationship management and just building those relationships is just paramount to your success.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. But before you came in the recording here, I recorded a little bit of a thank you to the listeners of the show, and I mentioned in that message that the best way to break silos is human connection.
Hey,
I think when we've gotten so Zoom centric and we've gotten so we're more connected than ever, but less connected than ever
yeah,
is the way I look at it.
yeah,
And really, you're right. Once you sit down and look somebody across the table over coffee or lunch, is really when you can get to know them.
yeah,
And I think it's the best way to break through what you just talked about, that past baggage or the history that you might learn of. And so I'm wondering, from your experience now doing this a
yeah.
couple times, what are some examples of institutions, whether advertently or inadvertently, allowing sort of the ghosts of their past to impact their present and future?
Yeah. Great question. The ghosts of the past. That's a great way to phrase that. Can think of one, possibly two, now that I'm digging a little deeper. First example that I'll give, and I won't name names, I won't tell the institution, but one of the great universities that I've worked for has a great athletics department and also a great just overall reputation. They use two separate logos, right? There's an athletics logo, there's the university logo, if you will. In that role, I was on the enrollment side of the house. And my job was to market the university to mainly prospective students from beginning of funnel to end of the funnel. I was told right away as I was reviewing all of our different publications and marketing materials, I noticed that we were only using the academic logo. And I asked why that was. And I was told very pointedly, oh, Vince, we don't touch the athletics logo. We're not allowed to. And I said, who told us that? Like, why aren't we allowed to use that logo? Did a little digging. And what I came to find out was, honest to God, I think it was like 10 years ago. Somebody had a conversation with the athletics department and they said, this is really just for us. We only use the athletics logo for athletics recruitment and athletics brand recognition, and that's it. And you guys are to use the academic logo and not touch the athletics logo. But I'm not joking when I say I really do think that conversation happened 10 plus years ago. And that was just what they stuck with ever since. So I said, let me, again, challenge accepted, right? Like I'm a competitive guy. Let me see if I can fix that because you're telling me that to go out and to recruit prospective students, you have such a powerful brand recognition with the athletics logo, and we're not allowed to use that. So when we're at college fairs, when we're just even basic emailing prospective students, they might not recognize the academics logo that we're using, but I can be 100% confident they would recognize the athletics logo. So I set up a meeting with the licensing folks there and I just explained the situation. I said, I think it would be so beneficial if we could use the athletics logo on some of our recruitment marketing pieces. And I promise you this, they said, yeah, sure, that sounds great. That makes total sense to me. And so I went back to the team and I said, guys, listen, great news. We're allowed to use the athletics logo. There was one stipulation. They said, if you use the athletics logo, make sure that the academics logo is somewhere also on that piece to tie the two together. And they were like, Vince, are you serious? That was the biggest no ever for 10 plus years. And I said, I'm not kidding you when I said I just had one meeting. I just sat down with this person for 30 minutes, explained the situation. Now, come to find out, I was new in the role. The person I had met with was, I think, somewhat new in the role, probably a couple years into the role. But that just goes to prove people change and things change. And so to just simply walk into a role or to just be in a role forever and just say, hey, that's just how it is, just seems silly to me. Let's re-engage. Let's have those conversations again. And to your point, don't let those ghosts of your past influence or really dictate your future or your present because it's in the past, right? Let's leave it in the past and let's move forward.
Yeah, I think I think most people's least favorite phrase in all of, not even just higher ed and all in general in life, is that's the way we've always done it. And
Yes.
my
Oh my
rebuttal,
goodness.
my rebuttal to that is always, and hockey goalies used to not wear masks. Sometimes it's good to rethink some things every once in a while.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yep.
Which is a great segue to this next question about fresh perspective.
Hmm.
And I think, you've touched on it here a little bit. It is crucial for a leader entering a new role to come in with an open mind and a fresh perspective. Certainly having sort of the things that you want to accomplish in mind, but
Yeah.
why is that such a key piece of being a new leader at a new institution?
Yeah, I think just how you teed that up is perfect, right? It's that mindset of we've always done it this way. We know, especially in marketing and communications, things evolve so quickly. So if we're so stuck in the past, and some examples that I can think of, when I first started in higher ed marketing, there was still a heavy emphasis on print publications. There was still a heavy emphasis on just a more like classical form of email marketing. But things change over time. And what I'll say is that you have to rely on the data, right? The data will show you exactly what you need to be doing. And so focus groups, talking to prospective students, current students, and figuring out, hey, is that print publication actually hitting the mark anymore? Is that moving the needle anymore? Is that email series that we were sending out hitting the mark anymore? Or was that too long? Was that subject line not good enough? So that's what I'll say is coming in with these fresh perspectives, but also just relying on the data. Because I think one of my least favorite things is sitting around a room or being in a meeting and everybody shares their opinion and you run with that, right? Somebody makes a decision and you run with it. And I just oftentimes think to myself, we're not the target audience here. Why are we making these decisions in a vacuum? Why are we not doing a focus group? Why are we not reaching out to who our audience actually is before we make these decisions? Yes, not beating around the bush with your question, coming in with fresh perspectives is crucial, but also having the data to prove that fresh perspective is actually the right thing to do. Because at the end of the day, I would never want to come in with a fresh perspective that is just the complete opposite of what our target audience is actually looking for.
So Vince, I'm wondering now that you've been in your role at USF for a little while now, has there been anything that's been surprising to you that's been not done in the past? Maybe some new things that you're implementing that haven't been done before at USF?
Yeah, I would be happy to share some awesome things happening at USF. To first answer your question about surprised me, I think there's always lots of surprises when you enter a new role, right? The thing that has surprised me at USF is just two things, really, as I'm thinking through this. First of all, how massive the organization is. So at USF, we have three campuses. We have our Tampa campus, which is commonly referred to as our main campus. That's the big one with the bulk of the students, faculty, and staff. But then we have two smaller campuses in St. Pete and Sarasota. Not only that, working through three campuses, but also 14 colleges. Soon to launch a new one. That's what's going to get us up to our 14th college. And decentralization. So essentially what that means, we have our university communications and marketing team, but decentralization in that each unit also has their own communications and marketing team. So again, the massive organization, the decentralization. So really practicing what I preach here in saying, take your time when you enter a new role. That's what I really tried to do over those first 6-7 months of me starting at USF. And, I've been into this role now for 10 months, but I really tried to get out there and just meet all of those different people and understand, what they have going on in each of their units so that, again, as I'm being tasked with not only marketing, but also brand for the University of South Florida, you have to make those connections to understand what's going on within each of these different units. So that has been surprising, just how massive the organization is, how many people, play a role into this. But also what I wanted to share with you I think the question was something about things that haven't been done before. I'll share with you now kind of the approach that I've brought to the University of South Florida. And I'm sure this has been done in the past, but something that I'm proud of. After I took that mini listening tour, if you will, when I first started, putting plans into action now and being strategic in what we're doing. So our Be Bold campaign, this launched last year prior to my arrival. It started off, the president, her word of the year was bold. And so we developed I can't take credit for it, but I'll say we, as the University of South Florida, developed a whole marketing campaign around the word bold. So what we did last year prior to my arrival was a lot of kind of touting our success, right? We're a top 50 public. We're now an AAU member, which is just amazing and remarkable success because we've done this in less than 70 years as a university. We were founded in 1956 and already an AAU member and a top 50 public. We have extremely bold research goals with research funding. And so all of these things, we felt like we have to tout our success. We have to own our backyard. We've got to start telling people how great we are. The campaign was fantastic. It achieved, a lot of recognition here in the Tampa Bay area. When I came on board, we decided let's extend that, but let's do it a little different. Let's evolve it. And so, with my journalism background, I spent 5 years in TV news before I jumped ship and got into higher ed marketing about 12 years ago now. Um, I always love to tell a good story in my marketing campaigns. I think if you have good stories, then your marketing campaigns fall into place, right? But where I may bring a slightly unique angle, at least, from what I've seen and heard from some of my colleagues, is that I like to consider myself a video first marketer. So to me, if you can go out and if you can get a good video, you can then break that down into all the other multi-channel content that you need. You can pull quotes for written stories, for web. You can do audio through a video, of course. If need be, you could pull a still frame and use it as a photo, even though, typically we like to send a photographer out on our shoots with us. But what I'm trying to get at here is I always approach a new marketing campaign as a video first. Let's get the video and then we'll break everything down from there, right? So Bebold 2.0, happy to share with you. We'll be launching here, depending on when this podcast runs. It might have already launched, but we're going to debut it at our USF Day with the Lightning, the Tampa Bay Lightning, down here in the arena this coming Saturday. We're going to show that commercial for the first time to everybody in attendance, and then you'll start seeing our Be Bold materials out in the wild through billboard and through a lot of digital tactics this time around. So we're gonna take all of our content and segment it out to all the different audiences that are at our disposal through all the digital channels that we work on. So to kind of wrap that up, Be Bold 2.0, it's all about the people this time around. So we found 5 people who we feel are just doing bold, amazing things at the university. We're telling their stories. So the 30-second commercial will be a compilation of all of their amazingness, if you will. And then we'll have 5 long form feature videos that will drive folks to our landing page, put on all of our social channels so that folks can just go and just hear from them all the great things happening at USF rather than us just tooting our own horn and saying, hey, we're great. Let's let our students, faculty, staff, even some employers in the area talk about the amazing things happening at USF. And I think that that's going to put a nice spin on kind of phase 2 of this campaign. So really excited to debut that again, coming up here with our day with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then, we're going to launch that out into the wild after that. So excited to share it with everybody.
Yeah, I love that because, we're talking about being a new leader. Sometimes, it's hard to find those stories and letting other people tell the story for you is a great approach because you're still so new, but you're trying to do so many things.
You know what? That's a great point. That's how I should have answered your first part of that question, because that was the toughest part of all of this. Because, when I spent a long time in my career at Kent State, my alma mater, not only did I go there, but then I worked there for 10 years. I knew everybody, right? So coming in as a new person, I thought that all these stories would just kind of fall right in my lap, right? Oh no, you have to go out there and find those good stories. But that's the fun part of it because I just so quickly acclimated myself to so many people around campus because I was reaching out to them actively and saying, hey, let's make sure that you're a part of this campaign. Like, tell me all the good stories that you have going on in your department. And so rather than, just kind of doing this in a vacuum, we involved all of our campus stakeholders in this and we found those good stories. And honestly, it was a blessing because it kind of like expedited my onboarding here because, as I was kind of having these meetings with folks, I was also just, kind of like better familiarizing myself with our 3 campuses, all of our different colleges. And so in the end, I'm just excited to launch it. And it was a really worthwhile experience as a new, leader coming into campus. So can't wait to share it with you.
To start with a clean slate like that is both exciting and then also I would imagine there's a piece of you that's, oh my God, there's nothing here. Where do I begin? But it is a great challenge to try to tackle. So that's exciting to hear.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a competitive person. So I take the challenge on and I say, let's build this up from the ground up and let's get moving.
Yeah, it sounds like super exciting times at USF, and I'm
Yep.
glad that you're thinking of things this way. I want to get back to part of for me at least, coming into new roles is navigating the kind of past history, the past relationships that may not have been the most positive based on any number of factors. And I found that a lot of times, like you mentioned, the first 3 months are spent building back up relationships and enhancing the ones that are strong. So how Talk about how damaging, in fact, negative interpersonal relationships of the past can be to a new leader trying to make an impact, both on their team and then across campus.
Yeah, incredibly damaging, right? And so that's why I make sure that I do everything in my power to try to fix that. So if we can't, I'll throw a term out there. I think a lot of our jobs is getting communicators to communicate. If we're not communicating with one another, how are we expected to do strategic marketing and communications plans? So if you have a partner that perhaps has not been perceived as the best in the past, I'll be honest, I don't really care. I'm the new guy in the role, right? So let's get this figured out. Let's figure out what that was that maybe has hindered us in the past. Maybe oftentimes, honestly, Shane, I think I figure out that maybe it wasn't that person's fault. Maybe in some terms, it was our own fault. It was the department that I'm working in fault, right? But at the end of the day, again, let's use that clean slate example. It's a clean slate. Whoever you had an issue with in the past, again, that's the past. Let's get this figured out so that not only can I and my team benefit from our relationship, but I'm sure the person who maybe has been negative in the past or what have you can also benefit from that improved relationship. So again, it's just so paramount to success to be able to walk in with that mindset and just say, "Hey, I understand maybe there were some issues going on, but that it's a new day." I say that all the time. It's a new day. I was just in a meeting today talking about brand standards, and I said that. I said it's a new day because there's, brand standard issues, there's logo issues going on. But again, I wasn't here for that. So at the end of the day, and I know this might sound like too powerful, but I don't care. I really don't care what has happened in the past because it's my job now. I'm getting paid by the university to get this figured out so that we can work better together in the future.
Yeah, I love that. It's a new day. And you're right. You can't fix the past. You can only work on enhancing the present and future. And so that's a great approach. And so as we wrap up here, Vince, if there's one message that you would hope listeners, especially leaders of all experiences, thinking about moving on to a new institution or a new role,
Yeah.
what would you want them to take away from this conversation more than anything?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I guess, give some advice that I've been given as I've taken on two new leadership roles is that take your time. And that's hard to do in the world that we live in because it's such a fast-paced environment. As higher ed marketers, we wear many hats. I put a LinkedIn post out there recently with a magical unicorn on there because we are truly magical unicorns, right?
I saw that. Yeah.
We are expected to do so much. We are really generalists when you think of it. We wear advertising hats, we wear marketing hats, we wear communications hats. But what we're talking about today is so much of our job. It's building relationships. It's getting the communicators to communicate. So the advice that I would give to somebody taking on a new role, especially a leadership role within a university, go in with a clean slate, right? Forget about what you've done in the past. Forget about anything else that has happened up until that present time. Go in there with a clean slate and take your time because if you don't do those building blocks, if you don't build those relationships up the proper way, if you don't take the time to do that, I feel like you're setting yourself up for failure because, again, you're not accurately getting out there and figuring out what's going on at your university. You're not accurately going out there and finding those stories. And so take those first 3 months, take those first 6 months. And as you're starting to get into the work, you're building up those relationships and you're building up all of those different communications avenues with these folks, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to be strategic about this. You come in with your guns ablazing my way or the highway. I don't think that's going to work. And I would just say to anybody who is taking on a new leadership role at the university, again, take your time, get this figured out the right way, build those building blocks up the right way before you just dive right in.
Yeah, that's great advice. Take your time. That is such good advice because you're right. You come into a new role and you want to immediately hit the ground running and make an impact. Yeah. And higher ed is uniquely situated to not reward that type of thinking. We are not the corporate world where you could come in and make sweeping changes. It just doesn't go well. It's your time. I appreciate that advice.
Yeah, and we're not the NFL, right? We're not a head coach. To that point, you have 2 years to sometimes the Patriots just fired their coach after 1 year, right?
Yeah.
we're not that. We're busy people, but we don't have to get it figured out that quickly. That we can take our time a little bit and be a little bit more strategic about it than some of these other professions get the luxury to have.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, some of our institutions have been around for hundreds of years without
right.
us. I think we can afford a little bit of time. And
Yes. Another humbling thing.
that's right. That's right. Vince, I appreciate your time. And I mentioned the sign off before the episode, but now that you're here, I'll say to you that you're somebody that embodies what the higher ed marketing community is about. You and I had never spoken before. I connected with you on LinkedIn about something that you had knowledge of that I was interested in. And that afternoon we had a phone call scheduled. And so I just want to say I appreciate you being that way and being emblematic of the community that I've experienced, and appreciate you helping me put a bow on Breaking Silos here.
Oh man, it's been an honor. I appreciate you. I appreciate even that initial reach out on LinkedIn. We work in a small world when you think of it. And so to make those connections again, so that's actually a good point, right? The work that we do, not only should we be making those connections internally, but just I think we all have to help each other out. And yeah, anytime anybody reaches out to me, and I know you do it too, Shane, let's stop what we're doing and help each other out, because that's the only way that we're going to get this all figured out together. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to be your guest on this final episode too. This has been an honor.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you to the listeners, anybody that's taken the time to listen to this show. It's been a pleasure. And to quote my good friend and one of my mentors, Jamie Hunt, let's go out there and bust some silos.
Love it. Thanks, Shane.
Thanks, Vince. Breaking Silos is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry best as your hosts. Learn from Dave Builds, Jenny Lee Fowler, Eddie Francis, and many more of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.